Hi everyone, welcome back to Lifting the Lamp. I'm Frater Eleftheria, and tonight I want to talk about one of the great mysteries, one of the great enigmas of religion, the number of the beast, 666. What does it really mean? I'm going to get to the bottom of that question by not only carefully looking through the rest of the Bible to see if it gives any hints about the meaning of that number, but also drawing upon the Western esoteric tradition and the knowledge of numbers in particular, and the significance of certain numbers to see if we can find anything deeper that gives us hints about the number of the beast and some of the symbols that are associated with that, that can give us some deeper meaning and some deeper knowledge into that number. So that's what I'll be talking about tonight. Most people see the number 666 as a negative thing, a symbol of evil. There are some people, most significantly Thelemites, who see it as a more positive number. I'll be exploring all of that tonight and coming to a conclusion about what the number 666 really means. The first most obvious bit of information is, of course, the origin of the number 666 in the context that we're talking about here. The number 666, of course, comes from the book of Revelation. It is the number of the beast. It is a number signifying a very specific power or force that appears in Revelation in the account of the last days. And that is the kind of big bad of the end of the Bible, known as the beast. And so, to understand the number of the beast, we need to really understand the beast and what that symbol is meant to represent. We can't just look at the numbers superficially and rely only on that to figure out its meaning. For example, some people have tried to just look at the fact that there's 3 sixes and 6 is 1 less than 7. 7 is the number of perfection, so 6 repeated 3 times is representing imperfection or falling short of God's perfection in some way. That may be the case, but the more consequential meaning of the number 666 can only be revealed by digging a bit deeper. So the first thing to ask is, can we attribute this number 666 to a specific person or a specific system or nation or something like that, which can help us define with certainty who or what the beast is, so we can know something of the nature of the number because of its association with the beast? And the answer to that question is yes. No, it's not Obama, it's not any of the people that the evangelical Christians have accused over the years of being the beast or the Antichrist. The true identity of the beast is actually a lot less sensational. It's a symbol of the Roman Empire, and in particular the Roman Empire under the Caesars. And in fact, the number 666 refers to one particular emperor of the Roman Empire, which is the Roman Emperor Nero. And the reason why we know that is because there are 2 different kinds of forms that the early manuscripts of Revelation took. One had the number 666 as the number of the beast. One had the number 616 as the number of the beast. And the reason for this discrepancy is because one of them, using the number 666, was trying to calculate the gematria of the Emperor Nero's name, Nero Caesar, from Greek, transliterated into Hebrew, which gave 666. And the people that were writing the Latin manuscript were trying to transliterate from the Latin name of Nero Caesar, transliterate that into Hebrew, and then turn that into a number using gematria, producing the number 616. So the fact that Nero is the name that gives rise to both of those different numbers in the two different versions of Revelation is very strong evidence that the number of the beast was intended as a secret code for the name of the Emperor Nero. So that's our first clue. We know that the Emperor Nero persecuted a lot of Christians. He didn't persecute as many Christians or was anywhere near as wicked as some of the other Roman emperors, but he does have that reputation, and he was contemporary with St. John of Patmos. But the kind of broader beast symbol is, as I said, a symbol of the Roman Empire, and the heads of the beast as a person, is really a person who is occupying a particular office, and that is the office of the Roman Emperor. And in Revelation chapter 17, of the vision of the scarlet woman riding astride the beast, that version of the beast, the 7 or 8 heads of the beast represent different emperors. So what is it about the type of person that is the Roman emperor that is considered so evil in the book of Revelation and is seen as the arch enemy of the principle of the Christ? Well, in order to explore that, we might have a look and see if there's anything else in the Bible that reveals what the number 666 is meant to signify. In fact, the number 666 appears on one other occasion in the Bible, and that is in the story of King Solomon. In 1 Kings chapter 10, verse 14, and 2 Chronicles chapter 9, verse 13, we see that King Solomon, when he was the king, received a yearly payment or a yearly kind of tribute of 666 gold talents per year. Now that seems like, just by itself, if you read either of the versions of that verse by itself, it seems pretty meaningless. Okay, so Solomon got some gold, and there's a measure of that gold which includes the number 666 in it. Well, so what? Well, in order to understand the broader context of these verses, you need to look at the other kind of things that were happening in the story and compare that to other parts of the Bible. So, in this part of the story of Solomon, there's a few things that happen. He receives the 666 gold talents a year. He has 700 wives, and he receives horses from Egypt. And as it so happens, every one of these 3 things is something which is specifically forbidden for the king to do in the earlier books of the Torah. Specifically in Deuteronomy chapter 17, verse 16 to 17. That part of Deuteronomy says that the king, if Israel should choose to appoint a king, the king shall not multiply horses for himself. And what did King Solomon do? He not only multiplied horses for himself, but he imported them from Egypt, which is the nation which was the nation of the exile, and the nation that was against God earlier in the book of Exodus, which is itself very symbolic, that Solomon should be turning toward a nation like that. And those verses of Deuteronomy also say that the king shall not multiply wives for himself. King Solomon had 700 wives. That's certainly a multiplication. And that same set of verses in Deuteronomy says that the king shall not greatly increase his silver and gold, yet he's receiving 666 gold talents a year. And if you want to know how much a talent is 29 kilos. 1 kilo of gold at the time of filming is about $74,000. So I tried to do the math, and math is not my strong suit, so you might want to check my math, but it works out to about $1.5 billion a year worth of gold that Solomon would have been receiving. And that's a lot of money. Imagine receiving that today. It would be an exorbitant amount of money. imagine how much it would have been worth 3,000 years ago. And I suspect that these figures, the 700 wives and the 666 gold talents, are an exaggeration, and the numbers meant to be taken symbolically. But that is, yeah, it gives you an idea that wealth and opulence of an excessive level is being referred to by these verses. And according to Deuteronomy, if the king should do these three things, his heart shall turn away from God. And that's precisely what happens with King Solomon. And later in the story, we see King Solomon turning towards the pagan gods, such as Moloch and Astaroth. And this forms the basis of the legend of the Goetia, which came in later medieval magic, of King Solomon sort of summoning demons and things of that nature. We have in Solomon a symbol in its own right, which is a symbol of the messianic king. And with the corrupted Solomon, or the Solomon turned away from God, we see the perversion, or we see the distortion of that symbol of the messianic king. Something which looks very similar, but is in fact a kind of twisted, wicked version of that same archetype. And the beast and the Antichrist are technically two different things within the Bible, and later theologians just connected them. But there's a good kind of rationale for connecting those two ideas together. And, you know, Solomon turning away from God is a symbol of a false Messiah, a false messianic king. And so what the book of Revelation is trying to say here is that the Caesars, the Roman emperors, were like false messiahs. They were like a distorted version, or a twisted version of the Christ, the true Christ. They were a mockery of the true Christ and the true messianic king. And if you look at the kind of early cult of the emperor, there's a lot of parallels with Christianity and the way that Christianity viewed Jesus. So Augustus Caesar was called the Son of God. He was called the Saviour of the world. He was considered a god in his own right. There were stories about miraculous things happening around his birth. And, you know, this was a figure, the Caesar, coming from a royal dynasty, what was considered a holy dynasty by the Roman imperial cult and by Roman paganism, and a dynasty which had a destiny to rule the entire world. And all of this is very similar to the narrative of the Messianic king in Judaism, and specifically of the Christ, particularly the stuff to do with being a god and being the son of a god and all that. Not so much in the Judaism version, but in Christianity certainly those parallels exist. And there was a strong kind of link between the figure of the emperors and the cult of the sun god. The Emperor Nero had a statue commissioned portraying himself as Apollo. And of course, there are a lot of parallels between the Jesus figure that eventually emerged from early Christianity and some of the pagan sun cults that were in the Roman world at the same time, such as the cult of Mithras. So we have a link with the solar principle here. But whereas the Christ of Christianity is seen as the positive version of that by the author of Revelation, the Roman emperor is seen as the negative or inverted or distorted version of that. And the difference kind of lies in the model of kingship that each of these two figures represents. So on the one hand, with the Christ, you have a figure representing the Davidic king, who had a very specific kind of role, a very specific form of leadership, which was not about ruling over people as such, but rather being a champion of the people, being on their level, and not having authority vested in themselves, but having God as the true king, having the divine as the true king, and the law as the thing that governed everyone. And even the king from the Davidic line was expected to obey every precept of the law. And so in that sense didn't stand above the people like other kings of the Near East did, where they were like living gods in the sense of their ego had been deified, that there was a cult around a particular individual, and anything they said was, to be followed as a command, no matter how unjust it was. So it was a cult that was based around power and might, the power and might of an individual, of a person, exercising power over other people, and dehumanizing other people ultimately by exercising that kind of power. And that's why King Solomon accumulating the wives and accumulating the wealth was so egregious, because it was creating an imbalance of power, and it was creating an inequality in terms of the wealth of the king versus the rest of the people. And so that is much more reflected, that imbalance of power, that tyranny is much more reflected in the Roman emperors. And so we have two competing worldviews here, which present very similarly as the great civilizing force that's going to save humanity and is going to rule the world and bring order to the world, and under the banner of a divine king. But one is all about empowering people and empowering those who are the least fortunate, those who are the most in need of compassion, but really everyone, versus just wealth for the wealthy and strength for the strong, and having the powerful few trampling over everybody else. And power and might being a virtue, and being admired, utterly devoid of any sort of humanity or any kind of kindness or compassion behind it. And really, it's the way of the world versus the way of God. And so I think the number of the beast was really a symbol of the beast, and the beast was in turn intended as a symbol of oppressive political authority, of tyranny in particular, and imperial power being forced upon others to kind of trample them into the dust is really a theme of Revelation and a characteristic of the beast power. And everyone's forced to take the mark. This is probably more of a spiritual metaphor. Some people have tried to say it's to do with an economic system, but it is certainly about making people into chattel, making people into subjects, to be ruled over, to have their agency taken away from them, and to have the state determine what they should and shouldn't do. And that is what is characteristic of the beast system, and that is the thing that Christ came into the world to overthrow. And that is the dichotomy that is being set up in Revelation. So as I said, the kind of, the contrast between the beast and Christ are really the contrast between two solar figures. And this is kind of corroborated by some information that we have from the Western esoteric tradition about the planets and the numbers that are sacred to the different planets, as calculated by looking at their number squares. So the planets, the seven classical planets, that is the Moon, Mercury, Venus, the Sun, Mars, Jupiter and Saturn, given a number in medieval ceremonial magic, from 3 through to 9. Each one of those numbers can be times by itself to get the square number, and then that's an extra sacred number of that particular planet. And then if you add up all of the numbers from 1 to whatever the square number is, whatever that number is, that is the sum of the other numbers, is another number that's sacred to that planet. And 666, as it happens, is the sum total of all the numbers 1 to 36. 36 is the square root of 6, and 6 was the number of the sun. So 666 is a solar number, and it indicates a solar principle. And this is something which gets spoken about in Thelema quite a bit. That the number 666 is just the number of the sun. You know, you can call the beast Little Sunshine, as Crowley said in his defamation trial. And so Thelemites, they look at the symbol of the beast and they look at the number of the beast, and they consider that the book of Revelation was actually trying to say something very different, but St. John didn't understand the symbols he was seeing, and Christians misinterpreted John's vision, and that in fact the beast is a positive symbol, a symbol of the new aeon. So while it's certainly not an evil symbol in Thelema, the beast is certainly an anti-Christian symbol. And whether or not you see that as good or evil depends on your spiritual beliefs, I suppose, and what kind of system of morality you follow or think is important. I think the symbol of the beast in Thelema is not the same as the symbol of the beast in Revelation. They're kind of two different figures. And the figure of the beast in Thelema is more of like a prophet of the new aeon, which has nothing to do with emperors or anything like that. Certainly not empires that existed thousands of years ago. So in that respect, I think they're related but distinct. But you do have this continuity of 666 being a symbol of the sun, of the beast being a solar kind of a figure. And in fact, there is a spirit that is associated with the sun whose name adds up to 666, and that is the spirit of Sorath, who is the kind of demon of the sun, as opposed to the angel or intelligence of the sun. So again, even though you can say in a neutral fashion 666 is a solar number, even here the emphasis is on the more negative shadow aspects of that solar principle with the number 666. And that's really what this beast principle is. It's the shadow king. It's the shadow sun, where the sun heals and nurtures the earth with its life-giving rays. The shadow of the sun scorches the earth with the intensity of its heat, with the intensity of its authority being brought to bear upon humanity. And whereas the king, the healthy king archetype is all about being secure enough to be able to put yourself out there for your people and to really show altruism towards your people. The shadow of the king archetype is all about feeling insecure, having something to prove, being very sensitive to the criticism of your subjects and wanting to silence any dissent towards your authority that might challenge your authority, and being unable to change, being unable to see the error of your ways and be an actual good leader. And so there was certainly a perception that this was the way that the Caesars were going, many of them, even in St. John of Patmos's time, with Caligula being the most infamous example of that. And there's a lot more that I could go into in terms of like the black sun as a symbol of like the negative solar archetype, and the way that Rudolf Steiner wrote about that and saw that as the power that was behind the rise of the Third Reich. But that's going very deep down the rabbit hole. But certainly we can see this 666 symbol as representing Rome, the Roman emperors, and the cult of the emperors, and the kind of excesses of that, and how that was different to the kind of the messianic form of leadership that Christ was trying to establish on the earth, and which we're still grappling with the consequences of that revolution in thinking even today. And we're still grappling with tyrannical leaders who want to overstretch their hand in terms of controlling their population, who are promiscuous or who have far too much wealth compared to their own people. So it's something we're still struggling against today. Even though the symbol of the beast is specific to Rome, and the prophecies of Revelation played out in real time in the form of those early Roman emperors, really we can say that on an archetypal level, the same cycles continue. The same global karma continues to repeat itself until it's resolved. And so there can be manifestations of the beast system even today. There can be manifestations of political authority that are like the beast, that are forms of the beast. It's like Philip K. Dick said, the Roman Empire never actually ended. The empire never ended. It just changed form. The Roman Empire, which Philip K. Dick described as a black iron prison, it simply changed form. I mean, look at the shields of riot police and the helmets that they wear. Look how similar that is to what the Roman legions wore. Look at the battle formations. All around we see repetitions of the Roman Empire in today's modern society. Philip K. Dick claimed that he received this particular bit of knowledge about the Roman Empire from a divine source, or what he interpreted as an alien source, which he then passed off as a work of fiction in his book Valis. But you can see this process actually playing out if you observe the history of the world over the last 2,000 years, particularly the Western world. The Roman Empire just evolved; it just changed form into something else. In a religious sense, Rome became the church, and the Pope holds the title of Pontifex Maximus. The first Pontifex Maximus was actually the Roman emperor himself, who was the head of the imperial cult. And then in terms of other nations and empires, you had the Holy Roman Empire claiming to be the successor to Rome. You had the Russian Empire claiming to be a successor to Rome. The Third Rome, so modern-day Russia, is a manifestation of Rome. The Western European countries are a manifestation of Rome because they emerged from the Roman Empire and the Holy Roman Empire. Germany was trying to create a third Rome when the moustache man took over, whose name I'll probably get censored for using by YouTube. So there's all these little connections. The British Empire was a continuation of Rome in a sense, because Britannia was a Roman province and the city of Londinium was founded by the Romans. America is a continuation of the British Empire, and much of the US state apparatus is inspired by Rome. They've got the Roman fasces in the Congress, I believe it is. All of the architecture of Washington is based on the Roman Empire as well. And especially since 2001, we've seen America acting more and more like an empire rather than a democracy that just minds its own business. So there's layers and layers to this, the ways that the Roman Empire has managed to perpetuate itself. So watch out for dehumanizing systems, and make sure that if you want to be on the side of right, that you stand against such systems. That is the big lesson of Revelation, and that is the big warning of the number 666. Follow the healthy archetype of the solar king, which is not just a Christian idea, but goes all the way back to the more noble forms of paganism, before the pagan world started to become degraded. But follow that healthy principle of the solar king who dies and is reborn, and in his sacrifice for his people brings life back to the world after the winter. Follow that rather than the unhealthy solar principle, the unhealthy king archetype. The oppressor who wants to dehumanize everybody with a system of total control, which glorifies one individual as though that individual were God. So this seems like a very stark choice that human beings constantly find themselves faced with. But I'll just leave you with the words of Robert Plant in Stairway to Heaven, who said that, yes, there are two paths you can go by, but in the long run, there's still time to change the road you're on. So that's what I would say about the number of the beast and its deeper meaning. Thanks everyone again for listening. If you enjoyed this content, please like the video, please subscribe to support my work. You can also click join down below to become a member, or click thanks to send me super thanks. And you can also subscribe to me on Odyssey if you want to support me there. So that's it for now, and I'll see you next time.